So this presentation is called, well, it was originally called the Configuration Editor Framework from National Instruments. And so I made a little bit of a change to this to say configuration editors in LabVIEW, which sort of looks at a broad spectrum of things that we can do with configuration editor. So I'm just going to get started. My name is Sri. We're part of a company called Multics, an alliance partner. We also do some Microsoft work, and we specialize in automated tests and aerospace and medical devices. We did a presentation on CI a couple of years ago at NI-week, and so that's part of the Center of Excellence resources on the ni.com website. So my business partner Vikas is also an architect, a LabVIEW architect, and a person architect. So we both run the company. We've got 20 years experience in LabVIEW, this, that, and the other. But yeah, that's not important. What's important is, we also run a user group along with some other companies locally, but it's also streamed online. So we discuss not just LabVIEW, but test and Python. We have presentations. Our videos are on YouTube. So we've had 4 so far, and they've been well received. So have a look out. Check the link out. All the presentations and the videos, as I said, are on YouTube, and there's a bit.ly link there, bit.ly UK tag. So getting started. Before I get started, I want to say thanks to the incredible community that we've got, and I can't believe how quickly this has grown into a VIWeek, and thanks, Steve, for starting that. And how everybody has received this is just incredible. In this presentation, at some point or the other, I'm going to use some of the toolkits and things and presentations and ideas that's been sort of floated on by the companies listed here. So NI Systems Engineering is the architect of NI, the configuration editor framework. So I've got some tips on how to make the UI looks like. And I use a lot of tips from JKI, the JDP science toolkits, which are which provide you the JSON conversion and also flatline controls, Q solutions for the incredible Q controls, MGI for Solution Explorer and Panel Manager, SSDC, Steve, and Endeavor for the Group Development Studio, G Central and LabVIEWeek for all the community effort. So thank you all. I am incredibly grateful for all the help and the stuff that you guys do. Okay, so bear with me. We're just going to talk a little bit of the fundamentals about why we need config file and what they are. So we need configuration files so that we can make our software a bit flexible, which means that we don't have to change things or hard code things into the software. So we're sort of taking it away, and you can make changes to the software. So the customer
Hello. Looks like we lost Sreejith.
Hello, hi.
Okay, back.
Yeah. Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody's mic is on, I think. So can you please mute it if that's okay? so I'll go back and then say, why do we need a config file? We need to make our software flexible so that minor changes that required to the software does not need you to go and change software as such. I mean, so we put our configuration into the into a file, which is then read at the start of the application normally, and then you configure it accordingly. So you can either have your startup settings or personal user settings or hardware configuration, so on and so forth. So as I said, I mean, we configure our parameters into that, and we can also have hardware settings. I mean, more or less, I mean, the LabVIEW community use it for hardware settings and application settings, I would think. I mean, so when we come to having hardware settings, I mean, and when our configuration becomes a bit more complex, it then gives way to some manual editing, and that can give you a lot of trouble trying to support that. I mean, so at some point, I mean, you would have to then weigh up the option of whether to provide them with an automated tool or an editor, or whether we continue supporting the software. So and configuration editors sometimes can be very complex to do, and it can take 2 or 3 weeks for you to come up with something which is, which does all the things that you need it to do. I mean, so like working with trees in LabVIEW is not that easy. I mean, so all of those things are going to hold you back in doing a software such as that. So I'm just going to talk about the types of config files. So INI files are very common. I mean, so it's flat, it's got a header, and it's easily readable by everybody. XML is brilliant for hierarchy. I mean, so which means that you can specify different things in a hierarchical fashion pretty easily. JSON is a mix of readable and also hierarchy, but in this example, we're going to use JSON. And the other option is to have a database. I mean, so we've had a couple of good presentations about SQLite during our user group, which was held last week. So Tom McCullin did the SQLite presentation, which was brilliant. And also Steve Watts talked about the SQLite toolkit as well. The SQLite toolkit is done by JDP Science again. If you can, please check that out. So these are the sort of common examples of your configuration file. So an example for a configuration file is our own LabVIEW.ini file, which has your user preferences, quick drop shortcuts, paths to things, and also you can also enable some crazy stuff if you Google for some secret tokens. I mean, so I would advise not to do this on your main dev LabVIEW, because it can crash. Some of the tokens can crash your LabVIEW if you try and do things. So if you want a safe life, I mean, then don't do this. But like Tom said, sometimes I like to live life on the edge, so I do try stuff out. So you can use configuration files to do stuff like that. So the configuration file then sort of corresponds to an editor in LabVIEW like this, I mean, which is our options dialog. And all of the preferences are then saved from this dialog, are saved into your INI file. You allow your user to change different things. So just on the LabVIEW.ini files, I mean, I recently found out that you can have a LabVIEW.ini file for your own project. I mean, you can have a project-specific LabVIEW.ini file. I mean, so if you can see this screen, and it shows you how to specify that. So you use the -bref argument and then specify the INI file, and that means that it's specific to your project. I mean, so if you create a shortcut or a batch file which allows you to do this within your project, that means that you can have your own settings for your project. And I mean, more importantly, you can then check that into a source code control, which means that your settings are always the same. I mean, so things that you care about are already sort of configured properly, if you like. And there's also an API which is sort of exposed by Darren Mattinger. So it allows you to read and write from INI files, the LabVIEW.ini file. So based on that, I mean, so the Q control or Q Solutions has an IDE Setup Tool which allows you to sort of set up your dev environment. I mean, so this is a really good tool. I mean, so it allows you to copy all your quick drop things and quick draw plugins and also your custom templates and everything else, and then place it into so what we generally have is we have a repo which allows you to sort of where we put all our quick drop shortcuts and also the templates, and then when we go to a new machine, we just run this tool, and it allows us to set up our environment the same way every single time. So it sets the INI files, it sets the class. So this is a really good tool, and thank you, Q, again, if you're listening. So are there any questions? Yeah. And the INI file, so I'll put a link to the INI file library that I was talking about. So this is the read INI file and the write INI file that Q uses in his toolkit. So check out the example. That's a really good one. So another example is in the XNET database editor. If somebody has used that, it allows you to sort of choose a node from your left-hand side or a tree, and then a corresponding VI then comes up or pops up in a sub panel. So I'm now going to talk about the configuration editor framework from systems engineering. So configuration editor framework is part of a bigger framework called the DCAF, which is used for like real-time and compact real, that kind of thing. And it allows you to rapidly start prototyping your real-time systems. And it can do a lot of things for you just by configuration. And one of the part of that is to configure your system to do different things. So configuration editor framework, which is a separate package in itself. You don't have to use the DCAF framework if you don't want to. So as I said, it's done by systems engineering. It ships with 2 templates. I mean, and it's available on VIPM. So look it up. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. So yeah, it depends on the asynchronous messaging library. It's similar to a QMH library, but it's got some more features, and it can also do UDP communication. It's probably a bit outdated. I mean, that's the only dependency it's got, and maybe we need to sort of think about, or at least request systems engineering, or because it's open source, one of us could pick it up and then modify it for active framework or DQMH or something like that. As I said, it's open source. Again, the link to that, the GitHub pages is in here. So I'm just going to switch to a demo as to what I was able to do. So if I can...
there is a quick question here. As of LabVIEW 2016, it was not possible to catch a drop between items in the tree control. Any news on that?
Catch a drop. I mean, it is possible to. So it is possible to drag and drop in the thing. I will demo that now. I mean, so if you can look at my screen, So this is a UI I did. I mean, it probably took me 3 hours or so, and it's based on the framework. So it allows you to. So I modified a template that ships with it. I mean, and I added some customization of myself. I mean, so this allows you to sort of give yourself a little bit of a configuration option. So you can right click on it and then go add. I mean, you can also have a toolbar which says add a new channel or something like that. So based on what I select, a different VI is now displayed on the right hand side. And then I can add different channels, and they have different icons. And so I've chosen this color scheme so that it's contrasting, and it's easy for people to see, but you can change it accordingly. So, and as I said, I mean, so you can add these things, and then you can go for save. It allows you to then provide a file name, and the configuration is then saved. Okay. Yes. So there's a toolbar in here which allows you to see which file is saved. I mean, this then gets saved into your into a file format that of your preference. So if I show you one that I did a bit earlier. So this has some more information in it, and then based on what I select, I get a different option. So you can build something like this pretty quickly. And so I'm going to come back to how we do this in a second. So on the drag and drop thing, I mean, so you can basically drag and change this. I mean, so this is all handled by the controller. The framework, and this comes out of the box for you. I mean, so you can then just configure your things to do exactly what you want to do. So I find it pretty useful. I've not done a lot of testing. So to answer Tom's question, it was about three hours or so to do this. And it's only because I've been a bit slow. I mean, but a fast programmer probably could do this even quicker. So, this basically, you can resize your UI and move it about. So this is based on something that JKI did. I mean, so I will share a link on this. You can also use on your UI some clever validation techniques, so that when the customer enters something which they're not supposed to, then you can sort of let them know easily, and then that means that your support after you deliver the software is minimized, and you can really bring some sophistication into your software by providing a config editor. So we do a lot of work with automation and test stand. I mean, so what we do generally is we put this in the tools menu and say this is a config editor, and you bring that up, and you can basically then you can basically then let the users do the configuration by themselves. So
there's one question from Hendrik. Can you enable the options in the tree, or even having a static tree?
Can you enable the options in the tree, adding? Yes, you can. Yeah, you can choose what a node can do. So I'm going to go into that in a bit. I mean, so this is an example of the JSON file that it created. I'm using the JDP Science JSON text toolkit to do the conversion. So if I go back to my presentation. So as I said, I mean, so when you install the tool VIPM, you get 2 example projects. And so there's a configuration editor and a hierarchical configuration editor. I generally use the first one. It does everything I want. So this is a class diagram of what a sample project will look like. I mean, so if you look at, I mean, so there are two important things in here. So it's the NI Systems Engineering CEF node, which is a node or a channel which you need to override for your channel or node. And then you also have a repository node, which basically it tells you how to say, tells the framework how to save your configuration and also read it back. So if you look at the arrows, I mean, so this is a class diagram. Sorry, it's a bit messy, but the closed triangle is inheritance. So, for example, the CREO repo is now inheriting from the CEF repository, and the current and the voltage channel nodes are inheriting from channel, and then the channel inherits from the CEF node. So this is just for you to get an idea of what is involved. I mean, so everything in this box, these boxes are framework. I mean, so you don't have to do anything. Even all of these are done for you when you create a sample project, but your project may look different to what this is. I mean, so if you were starting from scratch and not using the example, then you can just override from these two classes. As I said, the closed triangle is inheritance and the open triangle is association. So which means that it uses the repository, the group uses a repository, and so on and so forth. Are there any questions? No. Okay. So let's look at a sample project. The sample project, when you create a sample project, I mean, there are two different sections. So it produces a classes section, and it has the channel, CREO, the repository, and also the channels. So, and in the configuration tool, LabVIEw is your application code. Again, all of this is generated for you. And it also gives you some glyphs. I mean, so the PNGs in the glyphs library are pretty poor. So I would say get your own ones. I mean, otherwise it looks pretty bad. But other than that, I mean, it's brilliant. So I'm going to go and show you what each of the files look like. So in the CREO repo class is an open method. And in the open method, if you look at it, I mean, I say it basically opens a flattened string. And then you can then have different versions of your configuration file. And then if the version is matching the one that or if you can support the version that is being read back, then you then try to convert the variant back into the channel information. So, and for my example, I changed the implementation to use the JSON library, and so it uses the channels to JSON string node from JDP signs, and so which means that mine is a JSON instead of a flattened string. And the same way in the save in the same save method, they use a convert into a flattened string and then write into a file, into a binary file. So I changed that into a JSON file. So these are the only modifications I'm doing just to get my things going. So instead of here, you could then write an SQLite command to write to a database and then read from a database. And so which means that your configuration then becomes whatever you want. Or you could then have a class-based implementation to say that, okay, I have configuration saved in different types based on a setting or something like that. So, yeah, do they still not use PPLs and require you to distribute all the classes as unpackaged file? So, Aaron, Is this just for editing the configuration file, or does it address distributing configuration to your code? You mean the presentation, Sam? So it says, I mean, so does it address distributing code? I mean, so are you talking about the presentation, or? We can talk about that a bit later. Yeah, it writes the config file, and it goes from there. Okay, so I will talk about how that can be done. I mean, so once your configuration file is generated, then it's up to your code to then say that, okay, you read it back from that configuration file, and you do your hardware settings or something like that. So in a typical use case, I mean, so let's say if you had a hardware abstraction library, and you need your users to be able to say, okay, I have configuration A, which has an Agilent scope and a power supply, and a configuration B, which has an I digitizer and so on and so forth. So you're able to then create different files, and then your application can then react based on either configuration A or B. Yeah, this is just the editor. That's true. The application. All right, thank you. So the JSON output file I showed you just now, so it looks like that. So how do you modify the code and node the initialize? I mean, so the first thing to do is change the node class initialize VI or method, if you like. I mean, so if I switch to that, come on. Okay. So if I switch to the code and I open the project that ships with it, see. So if you look at a class, for example, so let's go to the repo class. I mean, and as I said, I mean, the open repo that basically then writes using the flatten to string, and likewise the save does the same thing. And you also have an option to provide custom views to your customers to say that, okay, if you want multiple channels to be edited at the same time, I mean, in this example, then you can sort of provide another interface, and then you can use your the repo class to then write back the channels. So if I look at the private data of the show class library of the repository, this is what your configuration would look like. Instead of having clusters, I mean, you could then say that, okay, I have a class hierarchy where I have a node class which or a configuration which then all of your nodes then override. And so if you provide a serialized and a deserialized, then you can sort of expand this or extend this quite considerably. Again, that doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, so we have provided HAL editors, I mean, or configuration editors, which didn't take, weeks to do. I mean, so maybe a day or two's work, and then a validation phase. So, so if I so that's a repository. If you look at one of the nodes, for example, so there are only 2 or 3 things that you need to change. In the initialize section, you basically say what the system name should be, and you can also so that's like the default name that it puts out. And in the get text, you put in the PNG file in the glyph folder, and it will pick that up. And so these are the 2 configurations. And then you have one more thing to allow you to sort of set the properties of the node. I mean, so you can say, is it removable? In this case, this is a root node, so we are saying you can't move it, you can't duplicate it. So if you set these properties up, I mean, the framework does the rest of things for you. So I can't duplicate or move or delete the root node. So every node has this, and then you override and set your options as such. The other thing that you need to look at is it shows you what subnodes are allowed within your within this node, if you like. I mean, so in this case, I mean, so we're only allowing them to use the group, and so if you have a separate name to the name of the class, I mean, then obviously supply the class name. If not, you can use the same. So if I look at the so the group then has a channel. So channel, and if you look at the options for channel, the channel has subnodes are empty, but you can move, duplicate, and everything. The good thing about inheritance here is that you don't have to then supply settings for each and every class that you provide. I mean, as long as the parent has a generic implementation, you don't have to then provide it. So if you look at the current node, which then inherits from the channel, all we're doing is, I mean, running the call parent method, and then the current, so we're providing a different glyph to it. That's all. So the settings are pretty easy, and you just have to configure it to do what your node needs to do. So if I switch back to the presentation, so the things that you need to do to modify a node is change the initialize method. And also, as I said, the edit options, which allows you to specify what it can do, and also the child nodes that it can have. And also the get text, which then allows you to specify the glyph, and the name is set in the initialize anyway, but you can specify a different one if you want to. For the framework to know which UI to use, I mean, you just have to supply a VI reference to it. I mean, so in this VI, the UI reference.vi, you supply the reference to the UI that wants displaying, and that's it, your configuration is done. So to change the configuration file from INI to JSON or whatever, if you look at the bookmarks, I mean, there are 2 bookmarks in there, which says user configuration, and they allow you to change what you browse for here. And also so it also allows you to provide menu, and the menu settings are done using the set menu options VI in the library. So this is just standard stuff. So the configuration file editor framework then allows you to do a lot of things which you would spend a lot of time trying to do yourself. I mean, so unless you have a library already which does a lot of these things, I mean, so I'm going to show you how to create a new node. I mean, so I use the NIGDS suite to clone a channel, and then so if I play this video here, so I go to the voltage class in here, and I clone. Sorry, I just check to make sure that the inheritance is correct from the channel, and I use the GDS toolkit to clone it. And so there's my temperature class. And then in the get text, I change my PNG to the glyph I want to, and then I go into to the edit options of the group, and then I say the option is also a temperature. Okay, I do a mistake in this. So I don't follow my own rules. So you'll see why. So if I run this and I add a group and then add a temperature node, and then you can see that the default name there is voltage, and so that's because I did not change the initialize. So yeah, you go to the initialize VI in the class and then change it to the default names you want, and then that's it. So then you've got a new node which has different things. You can also override the UI. So if the temperature needs a different kind of UI, then obviously do that, and then you can get a different UI to it. So yeah, it's pretty easy to do this, So we have a question on Discord. I wonder if it supports up conversions from older versions. Older versions of the configuration file or the older versions of configuration editor framework? So I think I will go back and answer that in a second. So
it's the configuration file, not the framework.
Yeah, so you can have, so that's down to you. So like how you saw in that screenshot, so you can say, okay, version 1 has this kind of a type definition cluster or a class, and then you can sort of support that. So you'll need a little bit of coding there, but it's not a lot. So any questions so far? Okay. Somebody's mic is on. Please, can you mute yourself? Okay, so that was the video. So, like I said, you can have a multiple channel editor, which is part of the example, but you can provide different views to your customer, maybe based on a user login, to say that, okay, an admin can do something more or things like that. So it's pretty flexible like that. So if I go back to the demo, so if I run this, the one that I created, so this is the shipping example. I have not done anything at all. So because this was open, I think. Right.
Oh no! Oh no!
This is why Fab says never do a live demo. Sorry. Okay. All right. So yeah, if I run this, then it allows you to. So in the tools menu is this multiple channel editor thing, but it also comes with your default menu options and things like that, and it allows you to add, different channels. Edited in post, no one will know. Yes. So that's the shipping example. So if I go back and then make sure that I follow my own presentation. So references to the UI. So I don't mean a reference as in a reference. But the references that I had. So again, as I said, DMC did a couple of really good presentations at IDE, and about how they make their UIs, and they also have a GUI design suite. So it's on VIPM. It's pretty cool. And JDP Science is flatline controls. So that's also really, really good. JKI is obviously. JKI also has some blog posts about how you do hamburger menus, UIs without title bar, and also pane relief. Pane relief is used for splitter bars, sizing and things like that, and it's a godsend really, because without that it really makes it difficult to do stuff with Paint. And the other thing is Darren Natchinger. So he released the quick drop VI that comes up. So he released the code. I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of this, but the source code for that is available now on one of his blog posts. So I'll give you a little example, a demo of what that looks like. So there's a link to that, and then the Q software innovations. So Q controls and the presentations as well. I really recommend you do if you're interested in UI. I like to make sure that when my customer uses a UI, it's useful for them to use. And so if you are interested in user experience and things like that, Q controls are a really good way to do this. X controls, in my experience, have been really, really difficult to work with. And also Adobe Color Wheel, it allows you to choose different colors based on them. So you can have complementary colors and things like that. So when you're painting or when you're choosing colors for your front panel, use that, and then it will give you hex codes which you can use in your VIs and your controls, which make it easy to make it look nice. So I typically hate what the modern controls and the silver and things controls look like, so I try to make it as less LabVIEw as it can look. So I'm hoping that NXG will do a better job in doing things like that. So if I go back to my example, so are there any questions? Yeah, Q is right. Well done, good recovery. Customers. Okay, so yeah, if I go back to my my UI, as I said, so I use the hamburger menu option from JKI. There's a link to the post. All it does is basically displays a cluster, and you can choose different colors and things like that. So to look at the framework itself, the framework. So this is the template that got auto-generated. I've only added 2 or 3 cases to this. So it registers a user event and uses this AMC library, which is a string-based communication library. It can also do UDP communications as well. So that's one of the reasons why the systems engineering group used this, because you can communicate with a remote target. So this configuration editor just doesn't need to be a static configuration editor, but it can be a dynamic one where you can discover things remotely and then set it up and things like that. But I agree that System Link can do most of those things right now, but this was pre-System Link, but it's still maintained and it's open source. If you find especially if you find a problem with it, at least go to GitHub and then raise an issue so that people are aware of the problems. And then if somebody can fork and do a pull request, that would be brilliant. I don't work for systems engineering, but I'm just so thankful that they did something like this, because this has saved me plenty of time doing the same mundane things. So so this is the hamburger menu thing from the JKI. So it allows you to choose what it allows you to do things with the menu. So all it is a menu button, which then sort of allows you to show a cluster up, and then these are just icons. Just normal icons with transparent PNG backgrounds. And the AMC library is just like a producer-consumer thing. It allows you to then queue up messages locally or to a different target. It also allows you to enqueue multiple items. as you can see. So yeah, this handles all the drag drop, everything for you already, and uses DVRs internally to read and write data to the repository. So if I look at one thing I want to show that's cool about the pane editor, the pane relief editor, is that JKI has been able to do a 0-pixel splitter bar. I mean, so for example, this one, so you can set the size to 0, and it does do something to the VIs. I mean, sometimes it takes it out of the libraries and the classes, but if you open and close it once more, it will say that, do you want to update the library ownership? And then you say yes, and then everything comes back to normal. But this is a really good toolkit I recommend if you're using splitters to do stuff. I mean, and one tip is to generally use only one control inside a splitter. I mean, which makes it easy to resize and stuff. So we can't have excuses of not writing UIs which look good. One other thing that we do is we generally get help of so we do like a sketch of our user interface, and we use a graphic designer to sort of say, okay, this is our view of it. It's an engineer's view. I mean, what do you think? I mean, and then we get them to design our user interface, and then in Adobe Illustrator, which includes all the hex codes and things like that. So we get it back, and then we use those color codes and then do our user interfaces. So there's a question which says, Q controls don't show up during edit time, do they? They do. They do show up. And alleviate control. Don't create your own X controls. Use Q controls instead. But there are also some good X controls out there, like the X-tab control from Sapphire. Okay, yes, good tip. But I've had unexpected behavior when I use X controls, but maybe my experience is different. But I've not used the Sapphire ones. I mean, the ones that I created my own. So, okay. So going back to my presentation, what's time check? We've got 12 more minutes. So yeah, so these are the references that I would say, I mean, please do check out. And there are plenty of good presentations that's been done by these guys. And again, I'm really thankful. For the configuration editor framework, I mean, so there's a white paper which describes everything about the framework, and there's also a forums link. And as again, I stress, it's an open source software, so by all means, go and have a look at it. And if you can contribute, or if you can at least say feature requests, then that would be pretty useful. And so that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions? Remark plus curiosity. If you are using Veristan, the System Explorer is typically a rich editor. Do you know if the System Explorer is based on the CEF? I do not know the Veristan add-on. I mean, so I'm really sorry, but I can check and get back to you, Matthew. How do we get access to all those links? I mean, so I will provide the presentation. It will be on the LabVIEW wiki. The video will also be there, and you can go to the links as you please. I'm just going to check the nowhere stand is not using it. Yeah, Benjamin is part of the decaf team, so thank you, Benjamin, for the clarification. So Okay, I'd love to see LabVIEW wiki page on the NICF. I think all the links should be posted. Okay, using the neat way of helping. Toolkit. Okay. Okay, cool. Right. So if there are no more questions, thank you so much for attending, and thanks again to Steve Watts for doing this. It's been brilliant. I hope this was useful.